Hi, welcome. So this is a session about emerging markets and content protection, probably more about the markets than the content protection, but we can get started here. I think before I get started, I should maybe tell you a little bit about me and my company. My name is Tim Schaaf. I run the product development group at Intertrust. I'm responsible for all of the products that we produce. Before that, I ran Sony's PlayStation Network business, and before that I was at Apple for more than 14 years, and I ran QuickTime and a bunch of other media tech and was a member of the original Mac OS X team. So I've been around this media stuff for quite a while. Intertrust is a company that has 25 years of innovation around content rights management, content security, and trusted computing. We're based in Silicon Valley, but we've got offices in London, Tokyo, Mumbai, and Beijing. We've got three main products that we've been showing at the show. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the products, but I just very quickly in this one slide. We've got a product called ExpressPlay, which is a cloud-based multi-DRM service and certificate trust authority. So with that, you can set up a service and manage DRM content very easily and reach all the devices in the world. We've got another product called White-Cryption, which provides app security for mobile apps and connected devices. And then we have a third product called Personograph, which is a product to support audience insights and programmatic advertising for mobile users. So on to the main topic. We're really bullish about the emerging markets. We've got customers operating today in China, in India, in the Middle East, in Africa, and we think this is an area where there's going to be tremendous opportunity, not just for us, but for you with your products out in the market, and we're really excited about it. We've had a chance to work with some of the best brands in China and in India, and it's really an exciting experience. There's a huge growth opportunity in these markets, but it's a big growth opportunity. There's billions of consumers. China and India are obviously the big dogs in this space, but there's a lot going on in other countries as well. There are more households in these emerging markets than we have in US, Japan, and Europe combined, so they represent a huge possible target. Hollywood is embracing the potential in these markets, and in fact, even though it was once hard to imagine, China box office performance today regularly surpasses US box office performance on the right kinds of content. And we're seeing in China now that Hollywood is beginning to experiment with the local service providers to deliver early window content offerings, UHD content offerings, and more. And so we see this not just as a secondary market for Hollywood, but it's becoming a really important target domain with unique requirements, unique expectations, but nevertheless a tremendous opportunity. With these opportunities, we've got some significant challenges, and I want to spend most of my talk focused on that. The first thing is the issue of connectivity. In these areas, you don't have the same kind of connectivity they're going to find in the States, in Japan, in Korea, and in Europe. You're going to be dealing with a lot of intermittent connectivity, possibly no connectivity, certainly slower connectivity, and a different dynamic around the cost of the connectivity. The monetization challenge represents people are working with a very different set of economics in their households. They're not ready to pay Western market pricing, and they're certainly not ready for the standard business models that have been dominant here in the US. I'll talk about each one of these in more detail. The third element is piracy, of course. Yes, we all know about piracy in these emerging markets. It's a deep concern, it's a deep issue for Western media, but we have to put it in a proper context and see how everybody can win in this proposition. And we think that there's a path forward here as well. That's good for both the service providers and the content owners and consumers. And then last of all, around the issue of the user experience. The Western content has been formatted and optimized around television and theatrical deliveries. And the reality is in these emerging markets, mobile is the dominant platform, and it will be for a long time to come. The expectations, both because of the age and the demographics of the mobile users in these markets, and the formats of the devices themselves are going to demand a different approach to the content publishing, different features, different ways of engaging users if we want to grow the businesses in these markets. So let me talk about each of these in a little bit more detail. In terms of the connectivity issue, obviously we've got mobile connectivity in the large cities, but what we're not seeing even in the large cities is really excellent broadband access. There is broadband, but the speeds are low, and the penetration is relatively low. And so the target market is going to be focused primarily in these mobile areas. In a lot of the markets, we have intermittent power, intermittent connectivity, and this issue is going to drive a whole bunch of different requirements on how you can produce an acceptable consumer experience for people in the presence of limited connectivity. We've got a partnership with a company called Kiora, and I'll talk a little bit more about their product in a minute, that tries to address this solution by providing a content service offering that can operate independent of the normal internet connectivity functions, and it can operate in a variety of different ways to supply and deliver content to people on mobile without burdening the mobile networks with a lot of data. And in fact, there's other companies operating in Africa. This one called Brick in Kenya is building hotspots that provide connectivity and operation in low power, no power context, hardened weather kind of things, so you can put these things in the center of a town or on a vehicle or things like that and deliver connectivity to a community in ways that simply wouldn't have been possible with the sort of Western world approach to network construction and network connectivity. I think that's going to be very important. On the monetization front, one of the biggest challenges is that, unlike here in the United States, where you get a data plan and you generally have essentially unlimited data access, it's a very common dynamic. In most of these other markets, you're certainly not going to run into unlimited data plans, which means the cost of the data is a significant factor in the consumer's ability to enjoy your services. The household incomes obviously have a significant impact on the ability of families to embrace subscription models, and even the premium transactional models are quite new in these markets. And so we're going to have to rethink the way this works. Excuse me. So in this context, the ability to build up a long-term relationships with your customers are going to require some new models. We think advertising supported models are probably necessary, probably essential. There will be a growth in these subscription sort of models over time. We're beginning to see that, but what we've seen in the market so far is that the subscription uptake is usually associated with a relationship with your telco provider, your mobile service provider, and they're beginning to offer content services that come along bundled with the connectivity as a way to bring a unique user value to the consumer. The third thing that we see is data monetization. Now, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but basically this is a complement to your ad-supported business models, and the basic concept is that you have the opportunity to be able to take the data that you've gathered about your customers and be able to monetize that data, share your customers' behavior with others who may have an interest in reaching those consumers without being able to do this in a way that doesn't sacrifice the privacy of the consumers and their rights around that data. And the last element here is talking about alternative content formats. On the internet, as we see already in the social networks, the content formats that have been pioneered here in the Western markets, long form, linear content, 22-minute section, 44-minute program models, these are models that derive from the TV history. And the reality is, in these new markets, there's no necessity for us to be attached to those markets. And I think a very important part of how you make progress in the emerging markets is to start to look at completely different formats, both in terms of duration and in terms of the integration of these video assets with other programmatic information, other experience data. In terms of the piracy thing, and I'm quite reluctant to refer to this as piracy. I think Hollywood looks at all of this as piracy. This is one of the few types of environments where you can talk about piracy and not get booed. But the reality is, content sharing has very, very deep roots in these societies because it derives from the reality of no connectivity, no content. You really had no choice. If you want to have a media experience, it required sharing. And those social behaviors, social expectations, are not things that you can overcome overnight. You're not going to change people's behaviors and their expectations overnight. And furthermore, you can, even when you deploy these things, the reality is people are highly literate. In these societies, they're highly literate technologically, and they are coming up with new models to be able to defeat your approaches to content management every day. There's a great story about a team of folks in Angola who decided to leverage this Wikipedia Zero program and Facebook Free Basics to be able to create an ad hoc media sharing network. And they basically embedded, the basic concept here is that Wikipedia provided free access, including the mobile network data provisioning for people who were simply trying to access Wikipedia and get the information resources from there. Facebook's Free Basics provides a similar sort of functionality around the social networking side of things. Again, the model is how can we expand the availability of these types of internet services to a broader audience. Well, these clever pirates have figured out that I can embed links and encode in special ways pirated media, and I can publish that on Wikipedia, and I can talk about it on Facebook in these private forums, and then it overcomes the burdens of the mobile data delivery, and obviously it circumvents all the other mechanisms that may be otherwise in place to control the flow of the data. So it's quite an interesting dilemma for Hollywood and for content owners in general, but this is just a natural evolution of the markets. We believe that the content protection that is basically driven from Hollywood today is going to be an extremely important part of the future monetization of the local services as we go forward, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that dynamic works today, but the ability to fully exploit the value of the content is hard to achieve if you don't have any mechanisms for regulating the flow of the content and for enforcing various rights on the media as it's traveling over the network. And we think that over time, we're seeing this already, the service providers in the local markets are beginning to embrace these things. Initially, they're embracing the technologies in order to obtain access to Hollywood content, but over time, it becomes a model for them to further monetize their own assets in these markets as consumers begin to engage. The fourth category here that I spoke about was the experience category. We know that these emerging economies are dominated by mobile, and it's young people, they're tech savvy, they're highly mobile in the sense of moving around all the time. We know in India we've got more than 50 million smartphone users under the age of 30. There's about 250 million smartphone users in India this year to be expected. In China, it's more than 600 million, and this is not just mobile phones, these are smartphones. There's tremendous opportunity if you can find ways to target audiences around that dynamic of mobile usage. Another example here is this example around Uber. When we take Uber here in the States, it's just a few minutes ride maybe, but in India, the average ride is up to 45 minutes, which is a substantial amount of time to be trapped inside of the vehicle. And we think there's some very interesting models around content distribution that are somewhat analogous to the in-flight entertainment systems that we see today on all airplanes. While, as I was talking about before, we've got these monetization considerations around content. In India, when Bollywood produces their movies, and again, they produce more movies than any market in the world, those movies are expected to be monetized within the first week or two of their lives. And from then on, the assumption is it's all piracy. And we think that there are going to be tremendous opportunities for the local market content creators to be able to begin to monetize those content experiences, but they're going to have to bring some sort of management to the media in order for that to be able to take place. And we think that's a very, very important part of the process. And of course, all of this stuff is only going to work in market if we can deliver a suite of tools and solutions that can be used in an affordable way and can be deployed on these lower cost networks, lower cost infrastructure. So I think these are going to be kind of the key elements here. I mentioned a minute ago a product from a company called Kiora that's providing access for these low connectivity, no connectivity environments. I brought an example of one of their products. This device contains a media server, it contains storage, it contains all the compute and software resources required along with a hotspot to be able to establish a local area media service. And the idea here is this can operate battery powered, doesn't require any connectivity to the internet itself. You provision it by putting the content inside of it back somewhere where you've got a content store. And then you can deploy these into automobiles, buses, trains, and even planes in certain cases. I mean, obviously there's all kinds of companies that are doing in-flight entertainment systems, but those are extremely expensive. This is maybe 15, 20 bucks at scale, so it's a very inexpensive solution, and it provides numerous opportunities for consumers to be able to access content on the go, or to be able to get access to content without burdening the mobile networks, and still be able to have high quality premium content level distribution consumption capabilities. It comes with a DRM that comes from Intertrust, and it can reach all the different types of devices. So it's very exciting. This product has a bunch of features here. We don't need to go through all the details of it, but it's an extremely important part of this story as we go forward. We've got, like I said, we've got to overcome the connectivity issues, and there's some great solutions there. Wrapping up, we believe that the technology that comes from our company and others are going to be absolutely essential to building these markets. Bringing DRM into the story provides the ability to both protect the premium content, but it allows you to bring a whole bunch of new business models into the forum, and to be able to transact and monetize your offering, your service, to be able to build loyalty around your service in ways that you cannot do without some sort of rights management systems. It's very important in these markets that you be able to operate around open standards. The local service providers are very leery of being tied to Apple or Google or any of the large IT companies. In China, it's just simply not a viable model for going to market. And we found tremendous openness to these open standards in these markets, because it gives them the technology that they need without being constrained by these vendor relationships that otherwise put them kind of in the back seat, and they don't have the ability to control their own destiny. We think that's another very important part of it. Furthermore, in terms of the security technologies, DRM is certainly a way to manage the flow of the content and to protect the rights of the content holders, and to help the service providers to monetize their investment in content and technology. But the security is also important because there's a lot of opportunities to be able to utilize this data, but the user's data. But this data is sensitive. It can be dangerous if it ends up in the wrong hands. And the security technologies are an important part of how you take care of your customers. This is how you build a brand and how you build trust, is by helping the customer to begin to learn that you're going to manage their data as carefully as you manage your own. So that's on the protection side. There's lots of things that can be done to incent the marketplace, and we think that there are going to be demands for all kinds of novel content services. Some of it was about the formats, some of it's about how it interplays with social media and other types of experiences. What we see in the United States in terms of these types of applications is we tend to see one function per application. But when you go to the emerging markets, what you tend to see single applications that contain the conglomeration of all of the interesting functionalities: media consumption, social networking, chat, communication, all kinds of things built into a single application. So there's tremendous opportunities there to create quite different types of experiences. I mentioned the data monetization opportunities here. We've got a product called Personograph. There are other things in the market that you can utilize, but they basically help you to, they can be used to subsidize your content through additional streams of revenue. And by the way, they can also be used to help you understand who your consumers really are. I mean, this is sort of one of the most fundamental lessons that we derive from the app marketplace, is that although applications often can develop very large user bases, when you go and you talk to the publishers, the reality is they don't know who their consumers really are. They don't know what they want. Even in ad-supported environments, they're sort of left to the mercy of Google's and Facebook's to do the targeting, and because they don't know who they're dealing with, so they can't go and engage with brands. They can't create deeper relationships with their consumers because they really can't tell who they are. And we think there's some great opportunities around there. And as I mentioned before, technologies like this Kiora box and others help to deal with the intermittent network connectivity and those sorts of challenges while these economies continue to evolve. Anyway, we're really bullish about the opportunities in these emerging markets, and we would love to work with you to try to find some great solutions that are optimized for the unique needs of the markets. Thank you very much.